Hi, thank you for joining us today. This is Pete McGilvery with the Office of Environmental Management. I'm joined by Jason Watts and also Eric Whitehead. We'll be going through the kickoff meeting for the 2018 NEPA self-assessment. I just want to hand off some logistics real quick, and then I'll quickly switch over to Jason Watts, our Director of OEM. For logistics-wise, we are recording this session. For people who aren't able to attend, we'll make sure we upload it onto our website and provide access to everyone. If you have multiple people that are attending from your specific location, if you do us a favor and type them in the chat, that way we can make sure we can have an accurate record of everybody who attended. Also, in that same vein, everybody's in listen-only mode because we're attending a webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jason Watts.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Jason Watts. As Pete said, we're here to talk about the 2018 NEPA self-assessment. We're going to go ahead and start, get into the review. We're going to end up reviewing a lot of the case files that are out there, the project files, and we're going to determine whether they're complete and compliant. We probably are going to have a lot more interaction with the districts this year than we did for last year's self-assessment. Last year's self-assessment was very much quick. We'd only been in NEPA assignment for 5.5 months, so we did a lot of it out of central office. This year we are going to have more interaction with the districts. We know you all are working with the documents from a daily basis, so we want to make sure if we're looking for something that we talk to you about where we're at. This is us, this is me, this is Pete, this is Eric. If you have any questions when we get through with this, please give us a call, send us an email, let us know what the questions are, and so we can get an answer. At the end of the day, when we talk about the NEPA assignment self-assessment, we absolutely have to have a conversation back and forth with the district. So if you see something that you think we're doing wrong or that you want to talk to us about, reach out to one of us and let us know. That way we can adjust on the fly and make sure this is right. All right, the objectives for this meeting, we're going to talk about an overview of the requirements. We're going to talk about what happened in 2017. We're going to talk about the NEPA self-assessment scope, the topics that we're going to look at this year for the self-assessment. We're also going to talk about what happened in the audit, and we're going to talk about important dates to remember for the future. This is a authority slide. This is here really for your convenience. There's lots of reasons that we have authority to do this. Let me just sum it up very simply. The MOU requires us to have a self-assessment. It requires us to look at things. The MOU is fairly vague on how we're expected to do that. What my goal here is for the self-assessment is to do something that benefits the department, both the districts and us. Last year through our self-assessment, we recognized several things that we saw could be improved on, and I want it to have more value to us than just complying with the MOU. I want us to look at it and say these are things that are important to the department and to central office, and what can we improve on or what can we get better at. This is the review team members. As you notice, they're all from central office. So you also notice there's no consultant on there. We are doing it all in-house, although we may reach out to the districts and ask the districts to participate, at least when it comes to the project file reviews. The other thing that I want to talk about here is the purpose of the self-assessment is twofold. Actually, it's severalfold, but we're looking at things to see whether we can improve. We're also, this year, in our self-assessment, in our report back to FHWA, going to talk about all the good things that we did from last year. And I think that's really important for you all to hear. We are going to, in the first several pages of our self-assessment report to FHWA, say here are the things that we took from both the audit and the self-assessment last year and made changes. It'll be good for the districts to see how we've improved and how we've modified things going forward.
So that being said, let's talk about some of the logistics. Right now we are submitting quarterly reports, self-certifications of approvals and decisions that we make under NEPA assignment. What you see on the screen is a screen capture of the report itself that we send. So as type 1s, type 2s, EAs, EISs, and reevals are completed, as well as anything that includes a Section 4F individual determination, these go on the approval report that we give to FHWA. Thinking back last year, let's talk about the things that they looked at and we looked at in our self-assessment. So for instance, in 2017, if we think back to our focus topics, we looked at documentation and tracking of commitments. We focused on type 1 categorical exclusions and looking for supporting documentation. We took a look at ponds and the consideration of whether or not it was considered in the PD&E and reevaluation process. We looked at our processes relative to species contamination and how it was documented, as well as overall QA, QC. And last year, the outcomes of the self-assessment for all the qualifying projects, we were at or real close to our existing performance targets for 8 out of 9 metrics. And the one that was a little outside the target was below 10% below the target for the 9th measurement, which is absolutely fine. Just told us there was an opportunity there to focus in. In our assessment, while it was brief, we found 3 successful practices on how we document files beyond the requirements, but we also did notice and able to communicate 12 opportunities for improvement on ways that we could make sure we're properly documenting our commitments and other documentation requirements in our project files. We did identify 3 non-compliance observations last year, focusing on permits and commitments. The great news is we all do a great job. You guys do a great job, and as the conversations come up, we engage the district to quickly work through and resolve the issue. And before we even came out of the self-assessment and started the FHWA audit, we were completely taken out of that particular process. The compliances were taken care of. So for this year, reflecting on last year, we have purposely gone and timed our self-assessment to be in the same timeline and review period as FHWA's self-assessment. We want to be consistent. We want to make sure that we are looking at the projects that are the same projects that FHWA will be looking at as well. So our review period will it began May 1st of 2017, and it will continue until today, April 30th, 2018. And we're looking at those reviews that ended in approvals, those qualifying projects between that timeline, as will FHWA. We're going to be also reporting on our NEPA performance measures and targets that are in our MOU. We've developed several CBTs that give lots of great detail about that. But it focuses on our compliance with NEPA and federal laws. We look at QA, QC of our decisions, how are our relationships going with our agencies and our public counterparts, and have we been able to increase efficiency and timeliness under the NEPA process with OEM and FDOT in the driver's seat than FHWA was previously. Additionally, a sample of the project approvals to review that we work on is based on our NEPA focus topics. So the way that to say that is when we start talking about the various focus topics, we may not be looking at every single, when we look at the various focus topics, we also say what's the universe of projects we're going to focus on. So for instance, we may be looking at something relative to the type 1s. Well, in that given reporting period, there might be 800 approvals of the type 1s. We're not going to be looking at 800 approvals. We may be looking at a fraction of those approvals. While FHWA may come in and look at the same timeline, they're not going to necessarily look at all the approvals, and we may find that we look at one set of type 1s and they look at a different set of type 1s just based on how the criteria and the randomization is selected. So for this year, for 2018, our focus topics that we're beginning to launch and work on now, we're going to be looking at noise. We're looking at the various requirements from the PD&E manual and how it's going to be updated and implemented within our various environmental documents. We're going to be looking at the type 1 categorical exclusions. We're going to focus on things that are related to 106 species contamination and relocation and how that's documented. We're going to be looking at the reevaluations that were processed during that time, again, looking at 106 species contamination and relocation. There's also a requirement in the MOU for the standard statement to be included on our various technical reports. So things like our CRAS, our cultural resource assessment, our preliminary environmental engineering reports, the natural resources evaluation reports, as well as there are requirements in the MOU to make sure that our public involvement notices also have the MOU language on there as well. So those are the things that we'll be diving into this year. And if we think about what our overall process is for this self-assessment, we identify our NEPA focus topics, and the way that we did that was we conducted lots of reviews. We had the self-assessment from last year. We've worked with legal. We had the audit report. We met with many of the folks on the phone at our leadership meeting. We then sat down together based on all of those inputs to identify the ones that we thought we should focus on for this particular review. We identified, based on what we were going to go look at, we identified that OEM self-assessment team that will be a part of it. We're thankful that we're allowed to apply a lot of folks and really pull in a lot of those subject matter experts to be a part of the process. That also allows us to do a more detailed review, but also allows us to offload some of that work so we don't have a small portion of the office really doing the bulk of the work. We're able to really kind of do this collectively. They'll be conducting the review, and if they're reviewing the documentation, if they have questions, we're asking them to call the district to get clarification. Maybe something's missing, maybe they're misunderstanding something. And I'm sure Jason's going to tell you, but we want to make sure our job is to help the department put the best foot forward. So we want everyone to have as many opportunities to be a part of the process and part of the record that gets reviewed all throughout the entire process. Additionally, once we've kind of looked at the records, contacted folks, we'll do our job here. Eric's a big part of this, developing the report for capturing our successful practices, our findings and objectives into something that will be internal and used as a mechanism to understand this is what we went through, this is what we saw, and this is what the outcomes were. That report will then be shared with the districts after it goes through an internal review here, letting the districts review everything just like you did last year for a couple of weeks. And then the driving factor is that last one, which is we are expected to provide a summary of the final report to FHWA 30 days before they are on site here. They are expecting to be on site in the end of September. A couple more points relative to this. There's a lot of great details that are out there. There's a lot of questions about what's a self-assessment, what are our performance measures, what are all the various things that are out there. And so we just wanted to take this opportunity to also just highlight the fact that we do have some computer-based trainings that are available out there that were developed last year that give very quick overviews of these various topics. When I say quick, I say 10, 15 minutes at most to really kind of focus you in on a specific topic that are available both in the learning curve if you're a DOT employee, as well as on our website and accessible there if you are a consultant and you just want to have access to that information. Dates to remember going forward. We've notified you guys we're having the self-assessment. We're talking about the kickoff now. We had a kickoff meeting with the self-assessment team in OEM earlier today. They're going to begin their desktop review. They'll have all of May and June to complete their desktop review. And then from there, we'll move into a report drafting process, of which we'll do some internal review, share with the district, let everybody see the report, get those comments back. We'll then by the 14th of August, finalize it and have Jason's review of the final report. And then by August 15th, we're expecting to have the final report back to the districts as well as our leadership. And then, of course, we need to have the summary of the final report and findings back to FHWA ahead of their on-site portion of their FHWA audit. So I'm just going to go through next steps. I'm going to hand it right back to Jason on this. So next steps, we're in the desktop review process at this point. We're starting tomorrow. It's going to be all May and all June for folks. to help, with the resource loading and how much time it's going to take to actually look at stuff. We just don't want anybody to be overwhelmed, so we've got some time there. You may be contacted during that process, people with questions or looking for a particular file. So you may get some calls. We've got those GBTs that are out there, and then we'll have the draft report will be coming out to you guys the end of July, and the final report will be out to you guys in the end of August. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Jason, who's going to connect it back to the FHWA audit.
So let's talk about the audit that is already happened. Also, let's talk about the audit that's coming up. So this year, FHWA is going to be visiting districts 3, 4, and 6. Notice that just means that's who they're going to come visit. That's who they're going to interview. They are going to look at project files for all the districts. So even if your district is not one that they're coming to interview this year, your project files need to be up to date. Let's talk about what happened last year, and this is why it gets important. So last year, they've taken a long time to do their audit. I want to be clear, they've taken a lot longer than 180 days, but they've been trying very hard to get it right. They had cited 13 successful practices for the department, and that's very good. We had a lot of very good things that came out of that, including quality control and quality and SWEPT, and our engagement with our legal staff and all of the training that we did. They had 3 observations, whether or not we tracked and properly handled our commitments. With commitments, what they really said was every district kind of did it their own way, and that it shouldn't be, it should be more uniformed. They also talked about our program level coordination. In short, what they asked for is they asked us to not implement federal policy without talking to them about it. And then they also talked about QA/QC. We think they kind of missed the boat on the QA/QC. They said that it should be more broad. And what they did is they looked at and said our self-assessment was the only tool that we used. And we used several tools, not just the self-assessment for QA/QC. They did cite us for 1 non-compliance observation. And this is important because the non-compliance observation, basically they picked 47 projects and said they were missing 1 or more than 1 document that needed to be in the file for analysis. This is something that the districts can really affect and control right now. A lot of those projects that they looked at were type 1 projects that don't come to central office. We are gathering up with those districts and trying to give some kind of written response back to FHWA. So as I said, they're going to visit 3, 4, and 6. They're going to do that September 24th and 25th. Here's some things that you can do to get ready. You can start looking at your own project files as you go through to make sure that they're complete. Remember, project documentation was a big deal to them. They really, either they couldn't find documents, they didn't exist, or they needed to have more analysis in the file. Before the September visits, especially if your district is going to be interviewed, if you have new staff, whether it's management staff or consultants, make sure they take the NEPA assignment training and learning curve or on our website. Even if you took it last year and they're coming to you, I suggest you go take it again just as a refresher. We're going to be reaching out to those specific districts that are being interviewed and work out the details, and Eric's going to handle that with the districts to make sure, when they're going to be on site and who they want to interview. Just so you all hear it, we very much asked FHWA to tell us kind of the level within the department they want to speak to. That way, if it's your directors or your secretary, that you can go ahead and block that time. Understand last year they went fairly high up in the department. They went all the way up to the assistant secretaries for interview. They may do it this year. They may not. We'll have to wait and see. Project file. We get this question a lot, like what's actually in the project file? Clearly it's the NEPA document, and there's a big list here. We're going to send out some more information about this. We have training on what's in the project file. We're trying to come up with a clearer message of these are the things that they're expecting and these are the things that we're looking for. A lot of times, a lot of these documents are somewhere It's just maybe they're not uploaded in the SWEP, maybe they're not actually included as an attachment, maybe they're not included as an appendix, maybe they're not where FHWA thinks they should be. So we're going to come up with a more standard approach to where these documents should be in the file. Now it's time for questions. If you have any questions, Pete's going to look and see if you put them in the chat. All right, seeing no written questions, what we'd like to do now is we're going to go ahead and put up the contact information screen. This is Eric's contact information. Feel free, if you have a very specific, very detailed question or just a general question, contact Eric and let him know. He'll get it up to me or Pete. If you don't feel comfortable, call me, Jason, call Pete, either one. Yep. Ask us anything you want. We're here to help. Understand, and I think this is a good way to close, the self-assessment is a tool the department uses to both get better internally, regardless of the audit, and also to improve our position when the audit comes around, we can handle it. So if there's nothing else, Pete, you have anything? Yeah, the only other thing to add is, so while we're beginning our self-assessment process, just remember that FHWA tomorrow afternoon, as a matter of fact, we will be doing a kickoff meeting and a training with the FHWA audit team within SWEP to begin doing their project file review. So just be mindful of that. Again, they're not looking at all project files. They're just looking at project files that are tied to the approvals from May 1st of 2017 till April 30th of 2018. So anything you're working on that's draft and moving forward starting tomorrow will not be accessible, but those project files will, just similar to last year, they looked at them from May until they showed up in October. They'll begin looking at them very shortly in the next week or so, and they'll have them until the end of September. We did get a question that said, when you say project files, do you mean SWEP project files? And the answer is we do mean SWEP project files. So SWEP has been identified as the official repository for your environmental documents and project files. So you really, that's the location that FHWA has access to. That's the location within our own procedures, including the PD&E manual, that identify that location as the official location for the environmental document project file to exist. So, okay, we got another question. Will you have this presentation on the web? The answer is yes, we will have this presentation on the web. Are the 4 focus areas for 2018 from FDOT or from FHWA? So right now, and it is kind of a little confusing because the self-assessment and the audit are basically happening at the same time, and it's kind of intended to do that. The focus topics for 2018 are the self-assessment focus topics. That's what the team here in OEM will be reviewing. We do not have any idea what the focus topics or what FHWA will be focusing on during their particular audit. We will not know that from them until they publish their report. There is a difference in understanding between FHWA and FDOT. When we do our self-assessment, we, as Pete said, we take focuses. We look very clearly at areas that we think either are risky or that we think we can need improvement on. FHWA so far has taken a more holistic approach to looking at the entire project file and then discerning out of the project file the things that they think need to be looked at. Now, we have suggested FHWA they take a more focused approach to that. They may this year, they may not, but they have been positive at least to the idea. Okay, we did get a couple more questions. Are the phone logs or other records like that going to be standardized, or will current district-specific formats as such be acceptable if uploaded as is? The answer is that they're absolutely acceptable as is. You have no conversion of current records to a new SWEP-specific format. No. The only things that really happen in SWEP are the interactive forms that are developed in SWEP are developed in line using the SWEP application. For things that you would upload to be part of your project file, they can be in just about any format you already have, so Word, Excel,
They could be video, they could be zip files, they could be all these various things. They just need to be accessible in the record. One of the other questions we've got was, are the project file documents the ones recommended in the AASHTO Practitioner's Handbook? There's some good guidance in there, but the real nuts and bolts of things are review the PD&E manual. That really establishes a lot of the various standards that you're going to be held to. Everybody should be already familiar with that.
And if you have any questions about whether or not a record is a project file and needs to be uploaded in the SWEP, please call us.
That's right. And the PDCs, they have those contacts with those PDCs that this is part of what their job is, to help them do that. We want you guys to be successful. Help us let you be successful. Just let us know.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you all for the time today. This will be uploaded along with training. Get your people trained. And if you have any questions, as we've said multiple times, please give us a call, shoot us an email. We're happy to get back with you.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.